Hola, ¿qué tal? Soy María and this is an embodied Spanish class for DayTranslations. And today in this video I wanted to talk about the past tense, one of the past tenses that we use in Spanish to describe things in the past. In previous videos you may have seen an overall of the past tenses in Spanish and also kind of a more in detail, in-depth videos about different tenses, and you may have seen a video in depth about the preterite or indefinido, which is one of the most common past tenses in Spanish, accompanied by the one we are seeing in this video. So the imperfecto or pretérito imperfecto is a tense, is a past tense that is used to talk about the past in Spanish, but to talk about descriptions, to describe the past in Spanish. This tense is all about giving the context of a situation in Spanish rather than to talk about the actions that happened in the past. To talk about the actions in the past, we use the indefinido, but to talk about the context, all that surrounds the actions in the past, that would go in imperfecto. And there are so many things that fall into this category of context. So, for example, I'm going to give you a sentence. El pasado fin de semana estuve tomando el sol en la playa. Hacía mucho calor y brillaba el sol. Last weekend I was sunbathing on the beach and it was very warm and the sun was shining. So the first action, the first verb is estuve tomando el sol. That's the action. I was sunbathing. That is the main action that happened in the past in this sentence. All the rest, which is in this case the weather was warm and the sun was shining, these two actions or these two pieces of information are context. They are not really actions that make the story advance. They are just giving us context. Therefore, we are using imperfecto. So I'm going to give you three main rules or three main characteristics in which we use imperfecto. We use it to describe qualities, characteristics, or attributes of something in the past context, right? So, mi casa era pequeña y oscura. My house was small and dark. That's a description of something, of a thing, of the characteristics of a house, and I'm talking about the past. So, mi casa era. Era is the imperfecto of ser, to be. Another use or another rule for the imperfecto is to describe habitual actions in the past, to talk about repeated actions in the past, to talk about habits in the past, routines in the past. Then, for example, iba a la piscina todas las mañanas el año pasado. So last year, I used to go to the swimming pool every morning. Iba a la piscina. I used to go. Yeah? So as you can say, I am translating already with used to. So whenever you find or you want to express I used to do something, you're talking obviously about the past, you would use imperfecto. Yeah? And finally, the third big point for the imperfecto is to describe, as I said at the beginning, describe specific situations in the past. Describing, that's the key element. And as I said, there are so many things that fall into the category of descriptions that are not really actions. So for example, Estaba en casa de mi novio y comimos una pizza. I was at my boyfriend's house and we ate pizza. Estaba en casa de mi novio, that's the context, that's a description of the situation. That's what surrounds the action of eating pizza. Comimos una pizza, that is indefinido, that's the preterite. I mentioned in the other video. The imperfecto, estaba en casa de mi novio. I was at my boyfriend's house. That's the context. So within this point, we use the imperfecto for actions happening in the past that are not seen as completed. So for example, cuando estudiaba en la universidad, salía de fiesta todas las noches. When I studied in college, I went out partying every night. So we don't have a specific time frame for this action. You can say, okay, when I was in college, that's the time frame. But cuando estudiaba en la universidad, when I was in college, that is the time frame itself. But it is a description as well. So we are describing the time frame with the sentence itself. So that goes in the imperfecto. And then salía de fiesta todas las noches. I went out partying every night. That is a repeated action. So every night I would go out partying. Imperfecto. So the first part, cuando estudiaba en la universidad, is the time frame that is also the description. Therefore, imperfecto. We also use imperfecto to tell the time and stating one's age. For example, eran las 3 de la mañana cuando sonó el teléfono. It was 3 a.m. when the phone rang. So, eran las 3 de la mañana. The time frame is pretty similar to the other one, but this is more specific. Imperfecto. The phone rang. The action. Pretérito. Sonó el teléfono. Tenía 25 años aquel verano. I was 25 that summer. Imperfecto. We are telling or we are stating the age, our own age, or the subject's age. And finally, when we want to tell a story, we combine both tenses. We have to combine imperfecto, this tense, and pretérito or indefinido, that's the tense we saw in the other video. And it is a dance, so we are going to be using imperfecto, as I said, to talk about everything that falls into the category of the context, everything that gives information about the context, the situation that is around, that surrounds the action or actions. And action is everything that makes the story advance. You have to keep those things in mind. So, for example, mood or every mental process, all that is not action. My mood is not an action that makes the story progress. So, for example, estaba triste cuando me encontré con Juan. I was sad when I met Juan. Estaba triste, that's context. That's something that impacts the action, but it is not the action itself. Or, for example, pensaba que Juan tenía novia cuando hablamos por primera vez. I thought that Juan had a girlfriend when we talked the first time. Pensaba, that's imperfecto. Cuando hablamos, that's the preterite. So you see, the mental process is not something that makes part of the action. That's not something that translates into movement or action. It's something that is happening inside my head, and impacts the action and the story, but it is not really making the story move forward. Therefore, we use imperfecto. I'm going to give you in slide right after this, you're going to see how we build the imperfecto. It is quite regular, so it's easy to to memorize or to learn how to build. And then I'm going to give you in another slide, I'm going to give you the the usual, the markers, the time markers that normally go with imperfecto. So you can just look at those, and then that's going to give you the clue. Like, you don't even need to decide if it is context or action. If you have this marker, then you'll need these tense, the imperfecto. And this is all from me today. I hope that by now, with these 3 videos about the past, you have a more or less clear idea of when to use one or the other, and you feel more or less comfortable about telling anecdotes and stories in the past in Spanish. As usual, if you have any question, leave a comment below in the video, and that's it. Have a beautiful day. Hasta luego.